Labour intend to charge VAT at 20% on private schools because I suspect they think that people who send their kids there will stump up the cash no matter what, and that these people have money. They will then use this money, Labour, to fund state schools. Basically, they will rob Peter to pay Paul. But what I believe they've failed to realise, I'm not sure whether they've factored this in, is that many people who send their kids to private schools do so at great sacrifice and are in fact paying twice into the education system. I spent my first year of secondary education in a state school. I'll be honest, when I started I was at the top of the class, but by the end of the year I was near the bottom. But then my dad got promoted to a post on Wall Street in the States. My parents sent me to a private boarding school in the UK run by nuns, and my family moved to America. Thank God for the opportunity I was given to go private. At boarding school I grew in confidence, and I'm here now because of it. My father's work, NatWest, and a loan my dad took out paid for my private education. We were nowhere near as rich as some of the kids there, but there are also many children, I would say at least half, whose parents were busting a gut to send them there. It is clear that the state education system is failing, but rather than robbing Peter to pay Paul, surely it would be better for the party to improve the state system without destroying the private sector.
Good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Monday, the 1st of April. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and the Nana Aquir.
Nana Aquir, I'm here. Yes, long waits in A&E reportedly kill 250 people a week in England. Is the NHS fit for purpose? And?
The programmes are just not good enough.
It's been a long time I watched the BBC. I think it's a rip-off.
And like myself, who's been a licence payer for many years, I do question whether I get value for money out of it.
Basically, it's just getting a bit too expensive for the quality.
People in Loughborough there reacting to the end of the 2-year BBC licence fee freeze. Do you think £169.50 is value for money? The broadcaster says it'll look at ways to reform the fee after 2028.
And working parents of 2-year-olds in England can now access 15 hours of free childcare a week. Shadow Cabinet Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds called it a pledge without a plan.
So the government is announcing these entitlements, but then you find working parents up and down the country can't actually access them.
Would you like to walk with me? Because I can point these people out to you. And again, I was told when I asked that a swastika was not necessarily anti-Semitic or disruptive to public order. That doesn't seem right to me.
Everything needs to be taken in context, doesn't it?
And did you see that at the weekend? Shocking footage of a Met police officer telling a Jewish woman that a swastika being brandished on a placard at the protest needed to be, quote, taken in context. The person holding the placard was later arrested for a public order offence.
And as you know, it's Easter travel warning, busy roads, no trains and bad weather expected today. It's almost like every day. Theo Tookumba is on the M25 and Ray Addison is at Euston Station. Theo, what's the latest?
And we'll have the latest here from the M25 as millions of people across the country make journeys. We'll have the latest with the delays.
I'm outside Euston, where engineering works has turned one of London's busiest stations into a virtual ghost town this Bank Holiday Monday.
Nana, why do they do that? Why do they choose the busiest time of the year to do engineering works, road works?
Oh,
what's the thinking behind it?
It's called being British. We like to make our lives difficult.
Right.
As ever, let us know your thoughts on all our talking points today. You can email gbnews@gbnews.com. But first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
A very good morning from the GB Newsroom, 9:33, and our top story this morning. New anti-hate crime laws have come into effect in Scotland today, which critics say could stifle free speech. The laws bring together existing legislation, making it a crime to stir up hatred against people with protected characteristics, including disability, age, sexual orientation, or people who are transgender. But some police forces have raised concerns about the law, saying it could be weaponised by fringe activists to target political opponents. Others, meanwhile, have warned that dealing with complaints could become a distraction for officers. The Scottish Conservatives say resources should be directed towards frontline policing. New estimates suggest more than 250 patients may have died needlessly every week in 2023. That's due to long waits in England's hospitals. A report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has revealed that more than 1.5 million patients waited in A&E for longer than 12 hours last year. It found the risk of death started to increase after a 5-hour wait and became worse with longer delays. The Department for Health says it has, though, added thousands of hospital beds to hospitals and insists it's making progress on waiting times. And Labour has criticised a plan to give working parents of 2-year-olds in England access to 15 hours of free childcare every week. It's part of an £8 billion package of support for families in effect from today, which the government says will increase to 30 hours in 2025. But some nurseries say there could be unintended consequences with the expansion of available places, putting severe strain on the sector. And Labour says it's a pledge without a plan, warning that a lack of details means many families will struggle to access the promised nursery places. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. More on our GB News alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Ben and Nana.
Good morning and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News. They say Easter is all about family, don't they, Nana? So
Easter eggs.
Who better to present today's show with than my Nana? Nana McQueen.
Very
Get
good.
It? No?
Is she black? Is she black?
Could be, you never know.
Oh, she might be.
Right, coming up on today's show, it's going to be a packed one. Not least, it's the Easter bank holiday Monday today, of course. And as tradition follows, people have been visiting local markets to celebrate the arrival of spring.
And just before the long weekend, East Yorkshire held its first ever Young Traders Market to encourage people under 30, that's not us, Ben, to get started in the markets and trade in their local towns. Our reporter Anna Riley she's at the event, has the story for us.
West Bananas, pick it up.
Markets are the heartbeat of many British towns.
Oh, you fresh veg. 2 puddings for £3, strawberry, seedless, grapes and apple.
But they must attract young people if they are to survive. That's why the National Market Traders Federation are supporting the next generation of market stall holders through their Young Trader of the Year competition.
The average age of market traders is about 55, which as an industry we need more young people. They're coming in. This is the 12th year we're doing this campaign. It is working, but we've got to keep doing this. We've got to keep fresh blood coming in. Young traders bring young shoppers, and it's just great for the industry all around. For little investment can be their own boss, have something they're proud of, and they can expand. I mean, there's loads of businesses out there that started off as market trading, even the likes of Tesco's. So it's little steps. We start at the bottom, work your way up, and you could be the next Alan Sugar.
The first Young Traders Market has been held in East Yorkshire to boost business for entrepreneurs aged between 16 and 30. These stall holders in Beverley appreciate the platform that the event has given them.
Can markets seem a little bit old-fashioned? Yes, but now we've got younger people coming down, we can really develop them and make the high street that little bit more interesting for the youth.
It's a lot better if you have to grind out the hours, work in markets like these, in the rain, in the wind, in the snow, and I think it gives you more of a love for it.
I think that's what's really good about young traders and doing markets. It's very supportive. It's not, I mean, it is a competition, but people don't really feel like that. I think it's nice to boost each other.
Most marketplaces are run by councils who have been their public custodians since Victorian times.
It's obviously important, particularly for rural areas, to create employment opportunities, and obviously self-employment and starting your own business is a great way to do that. So any way that we can help as a council through our economic development and business support services to encourage younger people to do that and to start their business here in the East Riding is obviously something we'd encourage.
And without the customers, traders young or old just wouldn't exist.
Buy my fruit, I like to buy my plants from independent people. I want to see it alive. I want to see people come to Beverley. And, OK, online has its place, but if we keep doing online, we shan't have any independent traders, we shan't have this, and that'll be such a sad thing.
The winner of the National Young Traders Market competition will be announced in August. Anna Riley, GB News.
Right, let's move on to our top story this morning. A shocking new report from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine says that more than 250 patients a week may have died needlessly in England last year due to very long waits in A&E for a hospital bed.
Well, NHS data for England shows more than 1.5 million patients waited 12 hours or more in major emergency departments last year.
And the Department for Health and Social Care spokesman has told us this morning we are determined to continue improving experiences for patients and making access to care faster, simpler and fairer. We're making progress in reducing A&E waiting times, including adding an extra 5,000 permanent staffed beds this winter to increase capacity and help patients be seen as quickly as possible.
Well, Lucy Johnston is the Health and Social Affairs editor at the Sunday Express, and she joins us now. Lucy, this is really a worrying trend, isn't it? Because basically, before you used to call an ambulance and an ambulance would come. Now you could wait up to 4 or 12 hours. And A&E was a place where you could wait. You'd expect at least 4 hours. Now people are dying, waiting, some of them waiting more than 12. What's going on?
Absolutely. It is shocking and it's totally unacceptable. And it has been going on for some time. In fact, we did a bit of work on this earlier in the year. And there are half 500,000 people waited more than 24 hours last year in A&E. So that is a huge length of time. And the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has done some calculations and has worked out that for every 72 people waiting around 8 to 12 hours in A&E, there is one extra or unnecessary death. And this isn't a place for sick people to get better. There's noise, people are screaming, the lights are on, they're treated or not treated in corridors. They're effectively being abandoned in those corridors, and the government really hasn't got a grip on the situation, despite its promises and despite the money it's thrown at it.
So, Lucy, how many excess deaths are we running at a week? Because the ONS recently changed the way they calculated the figure, didn't they, to some controversy. I mean, I think it was something about 45,000 last year, but then they fiddled the figures and it's gone down to, what, 12 or 15? Where are we at?
Well, the figures are all, it depends on who you ask and what data set you're looking at. There was a set of figures that showed there was 53,000 excess deaths last year, highest levels, I think, since the Second World War. But whatever way you cut it, whatever way you look at it, we have levels running at pandemic levels. If you look at the graphs, which I was looking at just this morning, you can see that the levels of excess deaths are they're not, you wouldn't really notice there was a pandemic. And these people are not older as they were during the pandemic. These are younger people. These are people who are in their middle ages and sometimes even younger still. We have had various reports. In 2022, the British Heart Foundation produced a report showing just in that year there had been almost 40,000 excess heart-related deaths. But yet, the government hasn't properly investigated the reasons why people are dying, younger people are dying in excess numbers. Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, did a report and blamed the fact that during the pandemic there was a decrease in prescription, uptake in statin prescriptions. But since then, there's been a subsequent report showing there wasn't this decrease in statin prescriptions. So that doesn't explain it, and ministers have to really tackle this head on and get a grip of what is going on, because people are dying in thousands.
But Lucy, I mean, and I agree, whichever way you cut it, the numbers are absurd, even if they have changed the way you calculate it to try and make it look a little bit better. But what about the bed blocking and the fact that ambulances are usually waiting in queues and things like that? Surely that is one of the major reasons why they can't unload the ambulances and why there's a situation where people are hanging out in the ambulances. You've got people waiting in corridors and hospitals. What are they doing to try and solve that? Because that's one of the biggest reasons why this is happening.
Well, they have put I think, £1 billion towards the recovery plan to try and recover emergency services. But as these figures that you're bringing today show, this hasn't worked. The 5,000 extra beds is not enough. And actually, what we need to look at is a fundamental reform and a change. Throwing pots of money, the NHS is famous at throwing pots of money to try and fix problems, which actually are deeply entrenched problems. So we have bed blocking, and that's partly to do with social care. We don't have a place for people to get to leave in the community. 13,000 people are stuck in beds. We have not enough beds anyway, not enough staff. It's a huge problem. And also there's the weekend effect. Just over Easter, there will be excess mortality because the hospitals are running at reduced capacity and people aren't being discharged. So we have to think about modernising the NHS, bringing it in line with Google, Tesco's, and making it a proper 24-hour service. That would do something, and improving social care. These are just two things.
Lucy, we're running out of time, unfortunately. We're just about done. But in 15 seconds, why aren't we receiving the same coverage of deaths, excess deaths, as we were during the pandemic? Do you remember every news station, every newspaper had a death count on the number of COVID deaths? We're running at similar or even higher numbers. Where's the same reaction?
Well, I absolutely agree. There should be press briefings, there should be investigations, and it's all to do with what we're choosing to focus, or what the government is choosing to focus on. But this should be a focus, and I agree, it's outrageous.
Okay.
Lucy, thank you so much. Well, listen, in response, an NHS spokesperson said that the latest published data shows our urgent and emergency care recovery plan, backed by extra funding with more beds capacity and greater use of measures like same-day emergency care, is delivering improvements alongside continued work with our colleagues in community and social care to discharge patients when they're medically fit to go home, freeing up beds for other patients.
Yeah, got it. Right, up next, the BBC licence fee is going up to almost £170 a year. Do you think it's value for money? We're going to debate that next. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Is the brand of toothpaste super important here, or is it more about the toothbrush? Because I was told a long time ago by my dentist, electric toothbrush, Pip, that is the way to go.
You're exactly right. I mean, the action of mechanically removing plaque, so using a brush, is much more effective than the brand of toothpaste itself. But in terms of the ingredient in toothpaste that we're looking for, it's something called fluoride. And fluoride is essential to help remineralize and strengthen our teeth. It's really important to use a toothpaste with fluoride. And in terms of brushing, using an electric toothbrush is just much easier. You know, you're brushing your teeth first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You're going to be a bit tired in those times. So using an electric toothbrush, you just hold it against your tooth and gum and it does all the work for you. So it's just much easier in my opinion.
But you have to use your electric toothbrush properly.
You're exactly right. Yeah, there is a technique of actually brushing your teeth, although it sounds really simple. With an electric toothbrush, you have to hold it against the tooth and the gum. Ideally, you want a pressure sensor in that toothbrush so you know exactly when you're pressing too hard. But if you're using a manual toothbrush, you need to move it around and small circular motions. But actually what I see is people who use manual toothbrushes, they tend to over scrub and over brush, which can actually lead to gum recession and your enamel thinning long term.
Sometimes I will get up in the morning and I will have breakfast and then I'll brush my teeth. Is that wrong?
Unfortunately, that's wrong. So the best time to brush your teeth is first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up. If you're brushing after you eat and after breakfast, you're brushing your teeth in that weakened acidic state. So your teeth are actually under attack and they're much more vulnerable.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's fast approaching 49 minutes after 9 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom. I'm Nana Aquia, and that's Ben Leo. Listen, the 2-year freeze on BBC licence fee ends this month.
Yes, and it's due to rise in line with inflation, taking the annual licence fee for a colour TV to nearly 170 quid, an increase of £10.50.
Well, the Director General, Tim Davies, says that it was right to ask questions about its future in a world that is now full of choice, and the BBC would proactively research how to reform the licence fee post-2028. So here to debate if the BBC licence fee is value for money is the former BBC executive presenter Roger Bolton and former Brexit Party MEP Rupert Lowe. Welcome. Right, who should we start with? Should we start with you, Roger? The BBC. Give us your thoughts on the licence fee itself, whether you think it's value for money.
Well, it's the cost. The licence fee is a cappuccino each, one cappuccino a week for each household. The problem is everybody has to pay, but that's what the cost is. And for that, you do get an incredible amount. I mean, you get 8 national TV channels. You get the BBC iPlayer with everything's on there. You get BBC Sounds with radios 4, 5, Radio 3 and so on. You get all local radio. You've got regional television. You get the BBC website, including sport. You get the BBC World Service, so this partly funded from elsewhere. And you get apps like Bite Size, CBeebies, Food, News, Sport and Weather. So in terms of value for money, yes, it is. The problem with it is, obviously, that there's greater competition now and more people are choosing not to use a lot of the BBC services. Although, on the whole, we just talk about television and forget the rest. So I think the debate should be about, do we need a BBC? What can it do? How do we pay for it? And it's when you start to say how and how much we pay for it that we have an argument.
So, Rupert, the problem some people have is the so-called campaign of woke bias being fed to viewers. For example, an episode of Waterloo Road at the tail end of last year featured students revolting at their school over their slavery links. There was an episode of Casualty in which a non-binary character proudly discussed her top surgery. People don't want to be forced to pay 170 quid a year for this kind of woke claptrap, do they? That's the issue.
Well, as you probably know, I've long been of the view that the BBC is now an outdated monopoly. Not since the Civil War have Britons liked monopolies, not since the Crown had a monopoly on power. And the BBC, I mean, hear what Roger says, but at the end of the day, there's absolutely no reason why the BBC can't stand on its own 2 feet. And if people want to watch the sort of rubbish that the metropolitan elite turn out, which in my view is divisive, it creates envy, it creates disunity, and it doesn't represent real Middle England. So I say time now to stop a forced payment of £170, responsibly defund the BBC. I'm not suggesting we should just collapse it. It should be defunded, stand on its own 2 feet. And if, as Roger says, it's such good value, people will make that choice and pay for it. If not, they won't.
Well, listen, Roger, let me...
There's a problem.
Well, Roger, let me give you...
If I may say so, there's a problem with that. And by the way, I thought as presenters, you should try and be relatively objective. And to pick 2 or 3 cases and make allegations as a campaign of workers is really not good journalism.
What are you talking about? Sorry, I haven't actually said anything, so you don't know, do you? You don't know what I think. I haven't told you what I think.
I'm suggesting what your colleague said in an introduction, that there was a campaign. There isn't. But setting that aside, if you're not going to pay the licence fee, you look at the alternatives. If you introduce advertising, you'll destroy your business, and you'll find that everybody else in broadcasting doesn't want that to happen because BBC will mop up the advertising. You talk about subscription.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be
directly.
allowed to mop up the advertising. The point is that they would be
The market
disbanded.
will
You
do
wouldn't
it.
have the whole
The
thing.
market will do it.
No,
If you want to advertise,
listen, the taxpayer or the licence fee payer has paid for the BBC to have the expansive network that it has. And actually, we would probably suggest disbanding it. But you talked about value for money. I'll just run you through some of the programmes.
I was just saying to you, sorry, please, on advertising, address the point that the industry is opposed, the rest of the industry is opposed largely to the BBC taking advertising.
Of course, yeah.
It would destroy their models and it would destroy you. Now, if you're saying you want an alternative to the licence fee, you have to address that point.
No, I was literally addressing it, but you interrupted. The point is this. OK, so I'm just going to address your value for money point. OK, so I'll read you some of the sort of story, what's got on the BBC. Fraud Squad, I think it's a repeat. Animal Park, probably a repeat. Homes Under the Hammer, a repeat. Bargain Hunt, a repeat. It literally goes on. They're all repeats. So it's for people watching, they're only going to get what they see. But to address your question about the model in advertising, they shouldn't be allowed to just...
Sorry, let me address that point. If you take 30% off the BBC's licence fee, which has happened in real terms over 10 years, you will get more repeats. But the discussion shouldn't focus only on television. What about all the radio channels? What about local radio? What about regional television? How about the BBC website? What about the World Service?
Well, listen, Roger, we're going to go to the weather, but we want to carry on with this. So stay with us, Roger, and also you stay with us. Plenty more still to come. Stay tuned for Britain's Newsroom.
Yeah, we're going to get your weather now with Greg Dewhurst. Back in a sec.
Thank you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest weather. Over the next few days, it does remain unsettled. We do have rain pushing north today, heavy showers following, but there will be some warm sunshine. We can divide the country into three today. Cloud and rain across this central swathe of the UK. Quite a cold feeling day. To the north of this, fairly cloudy, some bright skies, and then to the south of this, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of them will be heavy with some hail and thunder in there too. Could be some local disruption. If you are stuck under this area of cloud and rain, it'll be quite cold, temperatures 7-8 degrees. But in any sunnier breaks, we could see highs around 13 to 15 degrees, so not feeling too bad in the sunshine. As we move through into the evening time, further showers across England and Wales, perhaps some longer spells of rain along the south coast for a time. This area of rain continues to push its way northwards into Scotland, Northern Ireland also seeing some spells of rain. During the early hours, some clear spells in between. Windfall night, we could see one or two mist and fog patches developing. Temperatures a little lower compared to of late, but still largely above freezing. And then it's a mixed day on Tuesday. We'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers taking their time to bubble up, some of them on the heavy side at times, but many places across England and Wales staying dry, though turning cloudy. Very cloudy across parts of Scotland here as well. Outbreaks of rain through the day, some hill snow possible too. And temperatures 6 or 7 here, elsewhere 13 or 14.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Dumfries and Galloway for the A74M. The southbound entry slip road remains closed at junction 16, the Johnston Bridge turn-off to Parkwaved in Lockerbie and Moffat at the scene of an accident. And the M42 remains closed from Staffordshire into Warwickshire from junction 10 at the A5 down to 9, the Coles Hill exit for accident investigation work. In Essex, the Laneton Road, the A176 is blocked at Billericay by a building fire near the fire station. West London, the A4 at Cranford remains shut off the Henleys roundabout following a serious crash. And in Carmarthenshire, the A40 is closed in 2 places west of Carmarthen, westbound near to the Johnstown turn-off and eastbound at the St Clair's roundabout for accident investigation work. Trains are suspended out of Carmarthen to Cardiff Central and no long-distance trains all day into and out of London Euston. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good morning to you. It's 10 a.m. on Monday, April the 1st. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and the lovely Nana Akweer.
Oh, that's nice of you. Long waits in A&E reportedly kill 250 people every week in England. Is the NHS fit for purpose?
And the BBC licence fee goes up this month after a 2-year freeze. You just heard us debating about it. We're going to return with that in just a moment. But is it worth the £170 just under per year? These people in Loughborough don't think so.
Quality of the programmes are just not good enough.
It's been a long time I watched the BBC. I think it's a rip-off. And like myself, who's been a licence payer for many years, I do question whether I get value for money out of it.
Basically, it's just getting a bit too expensive for the quality.
Yes, stay with us. We'll continue that discussion with Roger and Rupert. But next up, working parents of 2-year-olds in England can now access 15 hours of free childcare a week. Shadow Cabinet Minister Nick Simmons called it a pledge without a plan.
So the government is announcing these entitlements, but then you find working parents up and down the country can't actually access them.
And the over 50s are putting a shift in as employment levels in the age group are at an all-time high and growing quicker than any other.
And as you know, it is Easter, and of course it's always travel chaos, busy roads, no trains, bad weather, and bad weather expected. Theo Chukumba is on the M25.
As the traffic builds up and the Easter getaway is underway, we'll have the latest from the M25 as millions are set to travel across the UK today.
And of course, let us know your thoughts on all today's topics. You've already got riled and ready about this BBC licence fee topic. Emails flying in. Lots of you saying, why should I pay 170 quid a year to fund the likes of Gary Lineker preaching about anything and everything on Twitter?
So 1.3 million he earns?
1.3 a year?
Yeah.
All right, for
more
some.
Than that, yeah.
Well, that's what your licence fee's paying for. Are you happy with it? Nana's also touched on the fact that the schedule is full of repeats.
Repeat.
Different shows. Also, I mean, a campaign group has said that they're flooding viewers with wokeism, stories on trans, net zero, climate change, whatever else. Keep those emails coming in. We're going to resume that BBC debate in just a second. But first, here's your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Ben,
Glenn, Nana, thank you very much and good morning. 10:02 and the top stories from the GB Newsroom this morning. New laws to tackle hate crime have come into effect in Scotland today, which critics say could threaten free speech. The laws bring together existing legislation, making it a crime to stir up hatred against people with protected characteristics, including disability, age, sexual orientation, or people who are transgender. But some police forces have warned that the law could be weaponised by what they've called fringe activists to target political opponents. Others are concerned that dealing with complaints could become a distraction for officers. The Scottish Conservatives have said that resources should instead be directed towards frontline policing. Well, we've been asking people on the streets of Edinburgh what they think about the new laws.
You're going to be going out and encouraging snitches and people to go and speak up about people just having a private conversation. You know, the key's in the word private.
The police themselves have said that they are only going to respond where complaints have been raised, and our concern would be that there are campaign groups out there that would be looking to raise complaints in order to silence people that they don't like.
That interpretation of the hate crime speech now could be used very much against us, and it's a recipe for disaster.
New estimates have suggested that more than 250 patients may have died needlessly every week in 2023 due to long waits in England's hospitals. A report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine revealed that more than 1.5 million patients waited in A&E for longer than 12 hours last year. It also found the risk of death started to increase after a 5-hour wait and became worse with longer delays. The Department for Health has said that it's added, though, thousands of hospital beds and insists it's making progress on waiting times. Some households across the country will feel the effects of a cash boost from today as new economic policies come into effect. The national living wage is increasing to £11.44 every hour, giving a pay rise to around 3 million of Britain's lowest paid workers. Small businesses will also benefit from a raised VAT threshold and fully funded apprenticeships for young people. Business Minister Kevin Hollinrake told GB News this morning that economic conditions are improving.
We understand it's been difficult, but things are improving. We see the economy turning a corner this year. We'll see interest rates dropping, taxes dropping, of course. £900 a year for the average person in terms of tax reductions with the national insurance cuts. So all those things are all good news for people. Of course, there's more to do, but things really are turning a corner.
Meanwhile, working parents of 2-year-olds in England are now entitled to 15 hours of free childcare a week. It's part of an £8 billion package of support for families in effect from today. The government says the scheme will increase to 30 hours for children over 9 months in age by September 2025. Labour, though, says it's a pledge without a plan, and some nurseries are also warning that the expansion of available places will put severe strain on the sector. Shadow Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds told GB News that hundreds of families will still struggle to access the promised nursery places.
The government is announcing these entitlements, but then you find working parents up and down the country can't actually access them. Now, of course, if Labour is privileged enough to form a government, we will stand by these entitlements. We will not take these entitlements away or reduce them. But what we will do is put forward an actual way of accessing them, of making them a reality for everybody who is entitled to them.
Millions of households will see their bills rise as firms roll out their annual price increases on what's being dubbed National Price Hike Day. Road tax, broadband, mobile bills, water and the TV licence are all going up, as are council taxes in England, Wales and in Northern Ireland. The average council tax bill will increase by £106, while water bills will jump by 6%. Consumer experts, meanwhile, are saying that those who might be worried about the cost of their bills should check for better deals. But it's not all bad news. Energy bills are due to fall to their lowest rate in 2 years after the regulator Ofgem has cut its price cap by 12.3%. It means the average household bill for gas and electricity will fall by around £238 over the course of a year, or about £20 a month. However, around 10 million households are still being urged to submit meter readings to avoid possibly overpaying. And finally, before we head back to Ben and Nana, 10 flood warnings and more than 100 flood alerts remain in place across England as the wet Easter weekend winds die down. It comes after 2 million journeys were expected on the roads, with rain and thunder forecast to bring travel disruption. Forecasters are still expecting more rain across the south of England today, with the risk of hail and thunder. The most severe delays to travel are expected between now and midday. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning, welcome on board. If you just tuned in, this is GB News. It's just coming up to 9 minutes after 10 o'clock. You're with Britain's Newsroom. I'm Nana Acquia, and this is Ben and Leo.
Now, let's see what you've been saying at home, not least about this BBC debate that's been raging. Julie says, good morning, Julie, the BBC should be shut down. It has never been fit for purpose from the mid-1950s when ITV started importing good old American programmes. John also says, I used to love the BBC, or Auntie Beeb, as we were brainwashed to say. I now absolutely detest it. It represents everything that's bad about Britain.
And Tony says the increase is expensive. If you don't watch it, why should you pay for it? Something that you don't use, and you wouldn't do that with any other product. And Christine says the licence fee should be stopped and the BBC to be defunded. I don't watch the BBC, so why should I pay for its rubbish? I'm literally looking to find somebody who said something good here.
Well, I'll provide an element of balance. There's a lot wrong with the BBC, not least impartiality. However, they do some. I enjoy Match of the Day, I enjoy their FA Cup coverage, certain elements of Radio 2 I enjoy, so I don't think they are bad for Britain. I think that's doing some heavy lifting.
But nobody's actually saying... I mean, in my view, I'm not saying disband of the BBC. I think it would make a great training school, but I cannot see why it has a plethora of stations. I mean, I've looked. BBC Radio 1, Radio 5, Asian Network, BBC Radio 4, BBC 2, BBC 3, Radio 4, BBC World Service, BBC Radio 1 Extra, BBC Radio Scotland, BBC Radio 1 Dance, BBC... and all the regional stations, which I actually think they should potentially keep, but, you know, because they should be community-based stations. But let's continue with our debate. As the BBC licence fee is value for money, is the former BBC executive and presenter Roger Bolton and the former Brexit Party MEP Robert Lowe. I'm going to come back to Rupert. Now, Rupert, why should we get rid of the BBC? Because a lot of people are saying we should get rid of it.
Well, as I said, Nana, I think it's now not fit for purpose. I think arguably when Reith first introduced it, he's a very highly Protestant, decent man. And at the end of the day, I think there was, between the wars, there was a logic for it. Now, with news available everywhere, no young people really watch the BBC now. I've got two questions for Roger. I mean, we've had to listen to quite a lot of what he's had to say. Question one is, why does the BBC still continue not to accept that Hamas is a terrorist organisation when the government has actually labelled it as such? And the other question I've got for him is, does he agree that the BBC licence fee, which currently, I'm right in saying, is the only debt for which you can get a criminal record or indeed go to prison for non-payment, does he think that in today's society that is correct, that the BBC licence fee should be singled out and treated differently to any other debt? Because I don't. So I'd be interested to know what he has to say about that. With regard to local radio stations, I did have a local radio station when I was chairman of Southampton. The fans used to call it Radio Rupert. And we used to try and compete against the local BBC stations, which are funded through this monopolistic levy. And ultimately, if the BBC wasn't there, I think you'd end up with much more competition and much more local radio, which was based on what the local community wants, Nana, as you just said. So those are my two questions for Roger, because as Ben just said, they're not impartial. They're not impartial. And I'd like to hear the answer to those two questions.
Well, first of all, when the country's divided, as it is, if you're in the middle of the road, which is the BBC, you get run down both ways. You know, it's not surprising that allegations of impartiality are levelled now when the country is so divided on so many ways. On the first question...
Hamas, Ben? I mean, Hamas, Roger?
Let him answer. Hamas.
First question on the Hamas terrorist organisation. It's the BBC's job not to tell people what things are, but to report. I have no problem with them saying it's an organisation that commits terror and does a whole range of other things. This was the question we faced with the IRA. The problem about these organisations is that there are lots of things, and every side in a debate wants you to label their opponents in a particular way. If you want me to say Hamas is a disgusting organisation that commits terror, happy. I don't think it matters if the BBC calls it a terrorist organisation. It's the job of BBC to report on the terror that it does.
It's the job to report the truth. And if an organisation is a terrorist organisation, it's not a judgment, it's the truth. They should be reporting that, surely.
They should report the terrorist activities that Hamas does. But Hamas is also a number of other things. So you've got to be very careful. You simply don't give one name to an organisation.
But they are a terrorist organisation. I mean,
Roger, if I may interject, the BBC never went round saying so-called ISIS, that according to the UK government, a terrorist organisation. They didn't do it with that, and they're dancing around Hamas for some bizarre reason, and they still keep doing it.
It's a very difficult issue.
It's not.
The BBC's job. Well,
no, it's easy.
Not in your view, fine, in my view, so we disagree. But all I'm saying is the important thing from the BBC is to report what the Hamas does. And for example, it should report. OK, but it should report that Hamas is committed to the eradication of the State of Israel. And it's important that you get people who might be supporters of Hamas to listen and face that fact. And if the best way of doing it is simply to describe these things and the horrors that Hamas commits, that's a better way of dealing with it. On the second point about local radio and so on, what you've got going on there, unfortunately, is a market failure.
I think the second point, sorry, was about getting a criminal record for not paying for BBC. Yeah. So we can address local radio anyway, because that was an aside, wasn't it, Rupert? No, he asked about whether it's right that people should be criminalised for not paying the licence fee.
Well, first of all, you can't go to jail for not paying the licence fee. You can be fined. If you don't,
No, you can. Technically, you can go to prison.
You're misinformed. You can.
No, it's not. No, sorry, you've got that wrong. Let me assure you.
No.
You cannot.
No.
Can I complete? Forgive me.
Please complete it. But
which is, you can't go to prison directly for failing to pay the licence fee. If you don't pay the licence fee, you can be fined. If you don't pay a fine, like with everything else, you can go to prison.
Oh,
At the moment, as far as I know, in the last 2 years...
You can go to prison for not paying the licence fee because so you can go to prison for being fined for not paying the licence fee.
If you don't pay a fine, you can go to prison. But at the moment,
same thing.
In the last 2 years, nobody has gone to prison. And look, I don't like it. I don't like the licence fee. In principle, I don't like a regressive tax. But I do want public service broadcasting. I do want the BBC. And when you look at the alternatives, it's difficult. I mentioned advertising. The other thing that Rupert mentioned was subscription. The problem with subscription, according to the House of Lords, there are about 4 million households in this country that don't have direct access to the internet. So if you switch off the BBC like that and go digital, there are 4 million households at the moment won't be able to access it. So before you can honestly say, go to subscription, we have to solve that problem.
Well, how many pensioners would that save getting knocks on the door from BBC bailiffs for not paying the licence fee? Roger, if I could just ask you a question.
No, you put remarks like this. Let me answer them because they're very provocative.
Go ahead.
There are about 850,000 people at the moment who don't have to pay the licence fee. I would think there should be more who should be exempt. I think the licence fee is very flawed.
I think everyone should be exempt.
But when you look
BBC resiled, Roger, on making the licence fee free for older people. They resiled on that. They made an undertaking and then resiled on it.
No, the government, if you go back, the government gave the BBC the responsibility of effectively operating social policy and funding the licence fees for the pensioners. This was a government decision to squeeze the BBC further. It squeezed it by 30% over the last 10 years in licence fee. But listen, please, can I just say to you, market failure does exist. And what about children's programmes? Only the BBC, for example, produces children's programmes. The rest are cartoons from the States. In local radio, we've had, because of the advertising...
Channel 5 produce Milkshake every morning. From 6 a.m. every morning, they have milkshake.
He knows he has to watch it with his kids.
I do, unfortunately.
But in terms of if you go to the statistics and look at original programming, and so on, you'll find the BBC is virtually alone. Now, what we've got to say to ourselves is not the licence fee first, the BBC first. Is, do we still need public service broadcasting? Let's have the debate about that. Secondly, is the BBC still a good way of delivering it? And thirdly, how do we pay for it? But we always start the wrong end of this discussion, which is the licence fee, which is flawed.
I don't think that's... I think, just saying that, I think you're kind of evading the question. Rupert, final word to you.
Well, I personally, I think it's time to responsibly defund the BBC. As I've written articles on it, it's time to axe auntie, basically, and I think allow people choice. They have plenty of other channels. Roger talks about people not having access to the internet. If you drive around most parts of the UK, you find people have got a Sky dish. That in itself gives them access to news. It gives them access to sport. And at the end of the day, I listened to Richard Sharp over the weekend talking complete rubbish about means testing the BBC licence fee. I mean, honestly, Nana and Ben, why would you go into such detail to fund an outdated monopoly? It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And it's time to simplify people's lives, let them choose. How many other countries have a state broadcasting monopoly run by a woke metropolitan elite that does not represent the majority of British people?
Well,
Simple.
Well, listen, we're going to have to leave it there because we're running out of time. Listen, we're going to have to leave it there because sorry, hold on. One second, Roger, we're running out of time, but it's been such a pleasure talking to you both, I must say.
Thank you.
Really good to talk to you. That's Rupert Lowe and Roger Bolton.
You know, they talk about, I can guarantee, they talk about impartiality. I can guarantee you would not have that kind of debate anywhere on the BBC where you've got such a plethora of views from each end of the spectrum about any topic you could think of. The BBC, in a discussion about closing this channel down, GBNews last year, had a 3-person panel on Newsnight saying that we should all be shut down.
Shut it down.
It's just outrageous.
Well, listen, to be fair, if they'd been scrutinised the way we have, they would already be shut down. I'm not going to say a few names, but you know who I'm talking about.
And they mark their own homework as well. They don't report directly to Ofcom like we do. So.
Well, listen, we'll carry on with that. Keep your messages coming, gbviews@gbnews.com. Just to be clear, the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, is going to proactively research how to reform the licence fee after 2028.
Right, coming up, King Charles made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis at the Easter service in Windsor yesterday. He looks well, I should say, greeting the public. We're going to discuss...
He shouldn't touch people because
really?
he's got, you know, he's possibly a weakened immune system.
OK, we're going to discuss that and more after the break. Stay with us.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where we need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and... Irritating?
It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primer stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead. Actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:23. You're with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Shall we go to some... well, let's get our panel in first. Author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe and former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. I was just going to say,
good morning.
Let's go to some positive royal news with the return of His Majesty the King.
Absolutely. So at the Easter service yesterday, he was expected to... the pre-briefing was going to sit in a separate, part of the church because obviously, so he didn't, the risk of infection, etc. But instead, and he wasn't going to be able to do the usual walkabout, but instead he surprised those loyal fans, loyal monarchists waiting outside by going over and chatting to them.
How do you think he looks? Is he thriving?
Well, I thought he looked... I mean, he's clearly, we know he's receiving treatment for cancer. So, I mean, I think he looks well, considering, I think...
But he shouldn't have done it, though. I mean, we all love him to bits, and this is unwise, I suppose, if you've got a weakened immune system.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but with the compromised immune system. But apparently the doctor said that it was all right in the end. That's what I read in one briefing.
You don't know, do you? I think
it's clearly a risk.
He shouldn't have done it, really, but that just goes to show what a lovely man he is.
But let's think about the majority, and I have, lots and lots of respect for the King and for Kate, of course, for what they're both going through. But let's just think about the majority of people in this country who are getting on the bus and going to have their chemo treatment, coming back on their... Like, people are out and about.
Yeah.
He clearly has the best medical advice available. He clearly is having the best treatment, and that's great for him. But most people have to get on with their lives, and, he was able to meet the public. I don't think he's massively put himself at risk.
You don't think... I mean, I won't even share the autocue scroller with Ben Leo now, because he's got a problem with his gut.
What? Thank you, Nana. That's what we were laughing at as we came back from the break, because Nana didn't want to touch the autocue scroller because I have a little bit of an upset tummy, not as extravagant as you've just described. Anyway, we don't want to hear about that kind of stuff.
Ben, are you blushing?
No.
Let's hope it's not norovirus.
It's too early in the morning. It's 10:25. So, how do you think the King looked? Did he look well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he looked... I think he looked clearly like, not in his absolute tip-top form, but he looked to me better than I was expecting, to be honest. And I think that's a good sign. And I think the fact that he did go over and speak to people is a sign that the treatment is going reasonably well.
I was most disappointed that we didn't see the Princess of Wales, Catherine, because she was tipped maybe to make an appearance.
Yeah, they stayed at home with the kids, and we're told that's going to be the case for a while now. After the video, a week ago, that she's not, she's not going to keep making public appearances. Remember the visit to the farm shop, which seemed to me was kind of staged in the middle of all the photo row. I think now we've had the video and the announcement, it seems to me that they are going to keep, that Kate and William are going to keep out the public eye together.
Well, this story was just horrendous, Emma. This was this woman who was complaining that somebody was holding a swastika banner, and I mean, should we show you the video?
Yeah.
I think it's wise that everyone... listen, if you're at home, have a watch. Listen if you're live on radio.
You'd like to walk with me, because I can point these people out to you. And again, I was told when I asked that a swastika was not necessarily anti-Semitic or disruptive to public worship. That doesn't seem right to me.
Everything needs to be taken within context, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a context of why does the swastika need context?
What exactly are you confused about?
What I'm confused is how you don't... In what context a swastika is not anti-Semitic? This is what I want to know. Because, again...
I suppose, I don't know how... everybody would feel about that sign. That has happened. I'm here working to the Bronze Commander, and it is not my responsibility, unfortunately, my role, to walk down the road.
Well, listen, the Scotland Yard spokesperson said that this clip is a short excerpt of what was a 10-minute conversation with an officer. During the full conversation, the officer establishes that the person was concerned about, had already been arrested for a public order offence in relation to a placard. The officer then offered to arrange for any other officers to attend and accompany the woman to identify any other person she was concerned about amongst the protesters. But after turning to speak to his supervisor, she had unfortunately left. Emma, it might be a short clip of what was a 10-minute conversation, but I think that short clip was enough.
I don't think the public should even need to ask the police to stop someone carrying a swastika. We all know what this means. This is not about taking it in context. Apparently, that was what the officer said. It needs to be taken in context. No, I'm afraid there are some symbols, and we all know what they mean. It's offensive to Jewish people, but it's offensive to all of us. And this is yet another example that we've seen of this sort of soft policing on certain sides of the political divide. Not even the political divide, just the ideological divide that we've seen with the pro-Palestinian marches, which are allowed to go ahead despite a small minority, you know, inciting violence, holding hateful banners and slogans and things like that. I don't think there's much that the police can defend themselves.
Matthew Larson, Suella Braverman has been vindicated, has she not, in her quite controversial column she penned last year about these so-called hate marches.
Policing, yeah. Look, I think I think it's incredibly unfortunate that the woman felt that she had to go and approach a police officer, as Emma says, to go and get it removed, and it's not the police aren't automatically clamping down. I'm glad, as the police say in their statement, that one person had already been arrested for public order offence and that there was a mechanism. I mean, I think, to be fair to the guy...
but the copper didn't know that.
I think he went to speak to a supervisor, which they're saying is in the 10-minute video. But look, I mean, clearly the police should be proactively clamping down on people who are waving swastikas. I think if it was a far-right demonstration...
they'd be on it.
Waving swastikas, quite rightly, they would be all over it. So they need to be all over it whenever it appears, whoever is waving a swastika.
I mean, Tommy Robinson can barely appear in public without being wrestled to the ground, even if he just turns up at something, which is fine.
Flag would be enough.
I mean, I think you're not holding an England flag. It shouldn't be an offence, but holding a swastika, whether you're Tommy... Tommy Robinson never has, as far as I know, but anybody who waves a swastika, whether their allegiances are on the far right or their allegiances are around
whether you agree with Tommy Robinson or not, he was nicked by about 40 officers in a completely over-the-top incident just for turning up to a cafe and going for breakfast. So, yet you've got people holding swastikas representing the Nazi regime.
Yeah, anybody holding a swastika at a protest like this is clearly doing it for incitement.
Especially
they're clearly doing it
when there's Jewish people there as well.
So the police should be proactively clamping down on it, absolutely. Wherever it comes from, whether it's from people in pro-Palestine cause or from the far right, we shouldn't have people waving swastikas in our streets and making Jewish people feel intimidated.
The problem when I looked at that was that you had officers on each of the corners, and he was drinking his cup of drink as he was talking to her.
Just
and
so
he was
swirling his drink around.
He was passive-aggressive in his behaviour.
I'm not quite sure why he's having a drink.
There's literally no justification for him then saying a swastika is not in context. So I mean, if he cannot see that where there's a march that is pro-Palestinian, where there is a lot of embitterment towards Jewish people and a lot of anti-Semitic chanting, that a swastika would be out of context.
Exactly. We're not asking one police officer to rush up and sort of tackle 40, Nazi protesters, but we are asking our police officers to have a modicum of common sense and understanding, and a system. And if they're going to go and police those marches, they need to understand the basics. I think they need to understand the basics, the politics behind it.
Have they not had a 2-hour online training module like they're getting in Scotland on the hate?
Do they not understand what a swastika is? Because in which case they shouldn't be police officers. And you're absolutely right, Nana. They should not be holding their coffee. It
was arrogant.
It's a wind-up.
All right, Emma, Matt, thank you very much. We're going to get your news headlines now with Sam Francis.
Ben, Nana, thanks very much. At 10:31, the headlines from the newsroom this half hour. New anti-hate crime laws have come into effect in Scotland today, which critics say could stifle free speech. The laws bring together existing legislation, making it a crime to stir up hatred against people with protected characteristics, including disability, age, sexual orientation, or people who are transgender. But some police forces have raised concerns that the laws could be weaponised by fringe activists to target political opponents. New estimates suggest more than 250 patients may have died needlessly every week in 2023 due to long waits in England's hospitals. A report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has revealed that more than 1.5 million patients waited in A&Es for longer than 12 hours last year. It also found the risk of death started to increase after a 5-hour wait and became worse with longer delays. The Department for Health, though, says it has added thousands of hospital beds and insists it's making progress on waiting times. Labour has criticised the government's free childcare policy in England, claiming ministers have made a pledge without a plan. From today, eligible parents and carers of 2-year-olds will be entitled to 15 hours of free childcare a week. It's part of an £8 billion package of support for families, which the government says will increase to 30 hours of free care in 2025. But some nurseries are saying that funding is not enough to meet the demands on their waiting list or cover increasing staff costs. And energy bills are due to fall to their lowest rate in 2 years after the regulator Ofgem has cut its price cap by 12.3%. It means the average household bill for gas and electricity will fall by around £238 over the course of a year, or about £20 a month. That's the latest from the GB Newsroom for now. You can also sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a look at the markets this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2623 and 1.1700 euros. The price of gold is £1,789 and 20 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is currently at 7,952 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Right, more to come, including, let me just read you this quick email from Steve. Good morning, Steve. He says, so the copper, to do with the swastika row, was having a coffee, so what? Get a grip. Don't you lot have coffee whilst you're working? Yes, but my point was, when somebody's making a serious allegation of somebody carrying a swastika placard, I don't expect coppers to be standing there, looking into their cup, swirling around, getting the last strands of their coffee down their throat, whilst the person is quite distressed and alarmed, making a complaint to you.
It was passive-aggressive, so if you watch the video, you'll see maybe, you know, like if somebody's talking to you, then you sort of look at the time or start looking on your phone. It was rude, it was passive-aggressive, and that's why we're pointing it out. And perhaps maybe you're listening on radio and you haven't seen the video, but I suggest you have a good look at it.
Right. From today, judges and magistrates can hand out more lenient sentences to people described as having a, quote, difficult and/or deprived background. I thought they did that already. So are we getting soft on criminals? We're going to debate that very, very shortly. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Gary King. In London at Canning Town, the A13 into town is closed. Long delays due to accident investigation work around Prince Regent Lane. Delays going back towards the Beckton flyover. Cranford, the A4 closed in both directions as well. That's due to accident investigation work between Bath Road and the A30 at the Henleys roundabout, not causing too much in the way of delays. Staffordshire, the southbound M42 currently closed. Long delays there because of accident investigation work between Junction 10 at Tamworth and Junction 9 at Coleshill. South Yorkshire, the southbound A1M exit Slip Road closed at Junction 37 after a problem at Mar, and train suspended between Carmarthen and Cardiff Central, and that's due to electrical supply problems. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
I like to call this one robbing Peter to pay Paul. The Labour Party have embarked on a journey that I can only describe as politics of envy. I think it's time we scrutinise their policies more closely and establish in our minds what a Labour government might mean to the education system. Sir Keir Starmer and his party have for far too long capitalised on the abject failure of the Conservatives and haven't really had to explain themselves. But as part of their manifesto, Labour intend to charge VAT at 20% on private schools because I suspect they think that people who send their kids there will stump up the cash no matter what, and that these people have money. They will then use this money, Labour, to fund state schools. Basically, they will rob Peter to pay Paul. But what I believe they've failed to realise, I'm not sure whether they've factored this in, is that many people who send their kids to private schools do so at great sacrifice and are in fact paying twice into the education system. I spent my first year of secondary education in a state school. I'll be honest, when I started I was at the top of the class, but by the end of the year I was near the bottom. But then my dad got promoted to a post on Wall Street in the States. My parents sent me to a private boarding school in the UK run by nuns, and my family moved to America. Thank God for the opportunity I was given to go private. At boarding school, I grew in confidence, and I'm here now because of it. My father's work, NatWest, and a loan my dad took out paid for my private education. We were nowhere near as rich as some of the kids there, but there are also many children, I would say at least half, whose parents were busting a gut to send them there. It is clear that the state education system is failing, but rather than robbing Peter to pay Paul, surely it would be better for the party to improve the state system without destroying the private sector. Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom. It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 10 o'clock. Let's have a look at what you've been saying at home, because we were discussing loads of things, weren't we? What were we talking about previously?
BBC licence fees,
oh, yeah, swastikas. I'll read you some of the stuff that's been going down. Marion, about the BBC, says, I literally don't watch the BBC or listen to it on radio. Why should I subscribe to something I don't get any benefit from? It's rubbish. Andy says, I think the licence is definitely not value for money. The repeat factor is ridiculous. They still put films on from 100 years ago. That's true. The woke factor is also another turn-off.
Yeah, and Colin says, we pay £10.99 per month for Netflix. My wife and I watch this channel most nights, and we hardly ever watch the BBC. Make them a subscription channel, the BBC, and let the public decide if they wish to watch it. Let the market decide.
Well, look, Evelyn says one of the best things that happened to me, meaning her, last year was when I received my free TV licence. I very seldom listen to the radio, and, as Anna said, most of the programmes are repeats. Also, the quality of the programmes has deteriorated over the years. Time for customers to realise exactly what they're paying for. Rubbish most of the time.
It's a shame, because the BBC was a great British institution. I remember it growing up. I treasured it very dearly, but something's happened, it's argued, in the last 10, 15 years.
I think it's more than 10 or 15 years. I'd give it maybe 30 years. I think... Really? I don't know what's happened to the culture within it, but it feels like they've been captured by a sort of wokist ideology that has meant that they are almost preaching. And I think also the internet has played a large part in it, because we can get our information from elsewhere, so we can feel now if someone is telling us something from a one-sided perspective, because we have so many other sources. I think the internet has played a huge part in the sort of demise.
OK. We'll keep these emails coming in. I mean, there's scores of them, so apologies for not reading them all out, but you are definitely fired up about this issue, so we're going to keep focusing on it. Let's move on to a new story now. Judges and magistrates, they can now hand out more lenient sentences than previously to people described as having, quote, a difficult or deprived background.
Now, there aren't many examples on the list, but poverty is included as an example of this mitigating factor. So are we getting soft on criminals? Well, Sir Philip Davis is a Conservative MP for Shipley, and he's here now. Sir Philip, congratulations. I want to ask you, though, what do you think's going on here?
Thanks, Nana. Well, I mean, actually, this story probably perfectly illustrates why GB News is so important, because I suspect the BBC and Channel 4 and Sky News won't be alerting their viewers and listeners to this. But from today, as you said, judges and magistrates will be able to, not just able to, they'll be obliged to, really, give lower sentences to people from difficult and deprived backgrounds. That includes poverty, low educational attainment, negative experiences of authority, experience of being a looked after child, and people who've experienced discrimination. So in effect, what we're saying here, Nana, is that we'll be sending a burglar to jail for a lower sentence because they were in care as a toddler, or they had a run-in with teachers when they were 10 years old. I mean, it's a complete nonsense. I mean, first of all, it's patronising to people from poorer backgrounds that, they should be, it's no surprise that they're committing crimes compared to other people. I mean, what a load of patronising tosh that is. But, I mean, so it's worse than people might think. I mean, some people might think, well, somebody who's poor, they've got in and done some shoplifting, that poverty should be taken into account when they're being sentenced. I mean, I don't think it should be, but I can understand why some people might think that. But somebody's poverty surely shouldn't be taken into account when they commit a rape or they commit a murder or anything like that. I mean, the whole point here is that the sentencing council are actually saying that you should be treated less favourably, irrespective of what the crime is.
Wow.
So, Philip, I remember years ago working for my local paper and then latterly on the national newspapers, the amount of times and cases I'd been observing and reporting on where the judge or the magistrate had said, well, I could have given you this sentence, but I'll reduce it because you've got some kids to look after or you know, you had a rough childhood. I'll take that as mitigating circumstances. This isn't a new thing. It's been going on for, I'd argue, decades.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Ben. It's not entirely new in this, but this is codifying. This is actually obliging judges and magistrates to do this. This is part of the Sentencing Council guidelines in the sense that if somebody doesn't do this in court, they're subject to an appeal, and presumably the criminal would win their appeal. You know, it makes it clear that somebody who is pregnant should be treated more favourably by the courts. You know, so in effect, what you're going to find, and you already get this to a certain extent, Ben, you're right, but it's going to happen more and more. People, women who commit a serious offence, for example, are going to deliberately get themselves pregnant. I've seen it happen already.
Of course it did.
In between committing the crime and being sentenced, because they know it will come with a lesser sentence. Now, that cannot be right. Judges and magistrates are told that they've got to act without fear or favour, affection or ill will. And this is actually making sure, I always thought we were equal before the law, and these new guidelines are making sure that we are anything but equal before the law. As far as I'm concerned, it's a complete outrage, and this unelected bunch of judges and do-gooders on the Sentencing Council need to be put back in their box.
Isn't the truth of this, and it is the elephant in the room, that they don't have enough prisons, they don't have enough space in prisons, and this is just an excuse. And also, we've seen how the legal system, the Crown Prosecution Service, has been operating. There's backlogs, there's delays, there's all sorts of things going on. Isn't this the reality and the truth of this, that they simply don't have enough prisons to put people in them?
Yeah, we don't have enough prisons. I agree with that, but that isn't the basis of these changes. These are changes based on principle, not based on a pragmatic view about the number of prison places. This is enshrining. This is not just going to be a temporary thing until we can build some more prisons. This is going to be it. This is going to be how we sentence people going on into the future. So,
but
yeah,
do you think they're doing that just to try and avoid putting people in prison, though, because they know they haven't got the space? So by finding a way of mitigating that, they can then justify it?
No, they're doing it because they don't want to send people to prison, but they don't want to send people to prison because the liberal judicial establishment don't believe in prison. That's basically it. They don't believe in prison. It's nothing to do with prison places. These people don't believe in sending people to prison, and they will find any way possible not to do so. I want more criminals sent to prison, but unfortunately, that is not a common view amongst the judicial establishment.
Yeah, it's a joke. I spoke to a knife crime campaigner over the weekend and I said you could solve knife crime pretty much overnight by having a zero-tolerance approach. Possession, 10 years. Using it, 20 years. You know, straight to prison. And he said, well, we can't do that because we've only got 500 prison spaces.
Exactly.
It's like, well, what kind of country do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a crime-ridden hellhole that's going down the line of San Francisco where anything goes? Or do you want to get your house in order?
Yeah, the thing is, though, Ben, the prison place situation is not a matter for judges. The judges should send people to prison or not send people to prison based on the evidence and based on the facts of the case. That is not their problem. The problem in terms of the prison places is one for the government to sort out. So that isn't an excuse. The fact of the matter is that judges don't like sending people to prison. Now, I contact my local police. And I said, if I wanted to reduce crime in my area by 50%, what would I do? And they would say, send the top 10 most prolific offenders to prison all at the same time. And if you want to reduce it by 80%, send the top 20 prolific offenders in the area to prison all at the same time. So we know that prison works. I mean, it's not sending people to prison that's the problem. It's letting them out that's the problem. We do need to send more people to prison, but this is a massive step in the wrong direction.
OK. All right, so, Philip, just very quickly, in 5 words, what do you make of that bombshell poll saying the Tories are going to get 98 seats?
Well, we'll see. There's only one poll that matters. That's the one on election day. I mean, the thing is, I think there's a lot of people who haven't made their mind up. There's a lot of people who are really annoyed, really frustrated with the government. I am often one of those people too. But when it comes to an election, people have to think about what do they really want Keir Starmer to have a 200 majority to inflict a load of woke socialism?
Well, it looks like it. It looks like that's what they want.
Well, let's see when it comes to it, do people really want that?
Yeah.
That's the question they've got to answer.
Right. Thank you, Sir Philip. Appreciate your time with us this morning. Thank you very much. Coming up next on the show, no trains, jam-packed roads, bad weather and crowded airports. So it must be Easter weekend, of course. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest weather. Over the next few days, it does remain unsettled. We do have rain pushing north today, heavy showers following, but there will be some warm sunshine. We can divide the country into three today. Cloud and rain across this central swathe of the UK. Quite a cold feeling day. To the north of this, fairly cloudy, some bright skies, and then to the south of this, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of them will be heavy with some hail and thunder in there too. Could be some local disruption. If you are stuck under this area of cloud and rain, it'll be quite cold, temperatures 7-8 degrees. But in any sunnier breaks, we could see highs around 13 to 15 degrees, so not feeling too bad in the sunshine. As we move through into the evening time, further showers across England and Wales, perhaps some longer spells of rain along the south coast for a time. This area of rain continues to push its way northwards into Scotland, Northern Ireland also seeing some spells of rain. During the early hours, some clear spells in between. Windfall night, we could see 1 or 2 mist and fog patches developing. Temperatures a little lower compared to of late, but still largely above freezing. And then it's a mixed day on Tuesday. We'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers taking their time to bubble up, some of them on the heavy side at times, but many places across England and Wales staying dry, though turning cloudy. Very cloudy across parts of Scotland here as well. Outbreaks of rain through the day, some hill snow possible too. And temperatures 6 or 7 here, elsewhere 13 or 14.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good morning. If you've just tuned in, welcome on board. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Nana Aquia, and Ben Leo. Well, of course, it's Easter. Happy Easter to all of you, by the way. Have you eaten all your Easter eggs, or are you perhaps trying to get back or get somewhere, because the Easter travel disruption continues as heavy rain is expected to disrupt more than 2 million journeys.
Look at those pictures. Absolute nightmare on train stations.
Who would do that? Why do people do this? Stay at home.
Stay
at the
home.
eggs. Stay with your family.
The RAC, they're predicting that 2 million car journeys will be made this Easter Monday today. But it's not just the road and railways. Our airlines have also been hit.
Well, travel journalist and broadcaster Simon Calder joins us now from Waterloo Station. Simon Calder, OK, it looks quite peaceful where you are. I'm not seeing the hubbub and what I'm expecting to see, the hullabaloo. What's it like?
It's actually working well here. I'll tell you why. That's because there's trains and they're leaving, many of them on time. London Waterloo, among the busiest stations in the UK, is not closed. If you go just a couple of miles north from here to London Euston, another really important station, the hub for the West Coast Main Line, you will find that there aren't actually any trains going north beyond Watford Junction. The whole line is closed south of Milton Keynes, which means that if you're trying to get from southern Scotland, from northwest England, North Wales, the West Midlands to London, well, you're not going to be able to do it on the usual route. It's been closed since Good Friday. I was actually there late on Thursday night. My goodness, an awful lot of people trying to make their journeys before it closed. And some of the crowds that we've been seeing have actually been on alternative routes. So a lot of people are travelling via Sheffield, travelling into London and St Pancras. Now, that's on East Midlands Railway. They've got not quite enough space, and certainly at the station at the London end, they've had to have marshalling in place because it's so busy. And on top of what we knew about, such as this 4-day closure, there's been so many things going wrong, particularly on the Great Western region. So we've had a whole litany of problems on all their lines, whether it's going to Exeter and beyond into Devon and Cornwall, whether it's Bristol, or today, you can't get to Swansea, or you couldn't earlier on because of problems with overhead wires and various other issues. So wherever you're going, if it's by rail, hope for the best, but be prepared for delays and disruption. I'm afraid the system isn't doing its absolute best today.
Simon, and what about the airports? There were some pictures from Faro Airport on the Algarve, which looked absolutely chaotic, to say the least. What was happening there?
It was absolute chaos, exactly as you say. So this started building up yesterday morning. What happened was there was some kind of problem at the border, shortage of staff. Somebody had forgotten to do the rosters or whatever it was for Easter Sunday. Some people had gone sick. Who knows, frankly? But what we do know is what happened. You got immense queues building up with arrivals, particularly from the UK, because, of course, we insist that our passports are checked and stamped since the democratic vote to leave the European Union. As a result of that, well, we've just seen massive queues building up, 3 hours typically. That had some knock-on effect on the flights that were going out as well. And so we had delays building up during the day. A lot of people got back in the early hours of this morning, frankly, because they were just not... the planes were just getting more and more delayed.
Listen, Simon Calder, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. I literally don't know why people do this to themselves on Easter. But listen, stay tuned. There's plenty more to come here on Britain's Newsroom. Stay tuned. Don't forget to stay in touch with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we're discussing. Greg Dewhurst is next with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest weather. Over the next few days, it does remain unsettled. We do have rain pushing north today, heavy showers following, but there will be some warm sunshine. We can divide the country into three today. Cloud and rain across this central swathe of the UK. Quite a cold feeling day. To the north of this, fairly cloudy, some bright skies, and then to the south of this, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of them will be heavy with some hail and thunder in there too. It could be some local disruption. If you are stuck under this area of cloud and rain, it'll be quite cold, temperature 7-8 degrees. But in any sunnier breaks, we could see highs around 13 to 15 degrees, so not feeling too bad in the sunshine. As we move through into the evening time, further showers across England and Wales, perhaps some longer spells of rain along the south coast for a time. This area of rain continues to push its way northwards into Scotland, Northern Ireland also seeing some spells of rain. During the early hours, some clear spells in between. Windfall night, we could see 1 or 2 mist and fog patches developing. Temperatures a little lower compared to of late, but still largely above freezing. And then it's a mixed day on Tuesday. We'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers taking their time to bubble up, some of them on the heavy side at times, but many places across England and Wales staying dry, though turning cloudy. Very cloudy across parts of Scotland here as well. Outbreaks of rain through the day, some hill snow possible too. And temperatures 6 or 7 here, elsewhere 13 or 14.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You
could win our biggest prize giveaway so far. First, there's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 11 a.m. on Monday, April the 1st. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Well, on the menu, long waits in A&E, reportedly killing 250 people every week in England. So is the NHS fit for purpose?
Sewage spills surge. The increased amount of sewage being pumped into our waters is becoming a health risk for swimmers.
Yes, holidaymakers across the country have been warned to stay out of the water this bank holiday weekend because of the sheer amount of sewage that's being pumped into our seas. All of that, plus the price of water is going up from today. And that's no April Fool.
It's just criminal, isn't it? Well, stay tuned because we'll be discussing Easter travel chaos. As busy roads, no trains and bad weather could be any day, to be fair. Expected today, Theo Chukumba is on the M25 and Ray Addison is at Euston Station. Theo, what's the latest?
As the Easter break comes to an end, we'll have the latest from the M25 as queues begin to build up all around the country. We'll have the latest travel updates on the roads shortly.
I'm outside Euston Station, where major engineering works have hugely affected one of London's busiest stations. I'll have the latest on this bank holiday chaos.
OK, and we've heard plenty from you on this already. The BBC licence fees going up this month after a 2-year freeze. Is it worth nearly £170 a year? These people in Loughborough don't think so.
Quality of the programmes are just not good enough.
It's been a long time I watched the BBC. I think it's a rip-off. And like myself, who's been a licence payer for many years,
I do question whether I get value for money out of it.
Basically, it's just getting a bit too expensive for the quality.
Keep those emails flying in, gbviews@gbnews.com. And one topic that's very close to my heart, Nana, is this water situation.
Oh, I'm so upset.
The state of our rivers, our seas.
It's disgusting. It's an embarrassment. It's a global embarrassment. I don't think the rest of the world are looking on us favourably at all.
We are a nation literally swimming in its own filth. What do you make of that? And you're going to be paying more for it for the privilege.
Well, stay tuned. We'll be discussing all of that here on Britain's Newsroom. But let's first get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Ben, Nana, thank you very much. And good morning from the GB Newsrooms. Just gone 11 o'clock, leading the news this hour. New laws to tackle hate crime have come into effect in Scotland today, which critics say could threaten free speech. The laws bring together existing legislation, making it a crime to stir up hatred against people with protected characteristics, including disability, age, sexual orientation, or people who are transgender. But some police forces have warned the law could be weaponised by fringe activists to target political opponents. The Scottish Conservatives, though, say resources should be directed towards frontline policing. We've asked people on the streets of Edinburgh what they think about the new laws.
You're going to be going out and encouraging snitches and people to go and speak up about people just having a private conversation. You know, the key's in the word private.
The police themselves have said that they are only going to respond where complaints have been raised, and our concern would be that there are campaign groups out there that would be looking to raise complaints in order to silence people that they don't like.
That interpretation of the hate crime speech now could be used very much against us, and it's a recipe for disaster.
In other news this morning, the head of the Nurses' Union has accused the government of packing hospital corridors with patients, and she said that the quality of care is not only undignified, but fatally unsafe. It comes as new estimates suggest more than 250 patients may have needlessly died every week in 2023 because of long waits in England's hospitals. A report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has revealed that more than 1.5 million patients waited in A&E departments for longer than 12 hours last year. The Department for Health, though, says it has added thousands of hospital beds and insists it is making progress on waiting times. The number of small boats crossing the English Channel illegally is up by 43% compared to the same time last year. Official figures from the Home Office show that 442 people made that crossing in 9 small boats on Easter Sunday. That's despite difficult weather conditions, with lifeboats scrambling to assist some of those arriving. Today, strong winds have now made the journey completely impassable. The new figures reveal a reversal of last year, which saw 36% fall compared to record arrivals in 2022. Some households will feel the effect of a cash boost from today as new economic policies come into effect. The national living wage is increasing to £11.44, giving a pay rise to around 3 million of Britain's lowest paid workers. And small businesses will also benefit from a raised VAT threshold and fully funded apprenticeships for young people. Business Minister Kevin Hollinrake told GB News earlier that economic conditions are, he says, improving.
We understand it's been difficult, but things are improving. We'll see the economy turning a corner this year. We'll see interest rates dropping, taxes dropping, of course. £900 a year for the average person in terms of tax reductions with the national insurance cuts. So all those things are all good news for people. Of course, there's more to do, but things really are turning a corner.
Meanwhile, working parents of 2-year-olds in England are now entitled to 15 hours of free childcare a week. It's part of an £8 billion package of support for families in effect from today. Labour, though, says it's a pledge without a plan, and some nurseries are warning that the expansion of available places will put severe strain on the sector. Well, Shadow Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds told GB News that hundreds of families will still struggle to access those promised nursery places.
The government is announcing these entitlements, but then you find working parents up and down the country can't actually access them. Now, Of course, if Labour is privileged enough to form a government, we will stand by these entitlements. We will not take these entitlements away or reduce them. But what we will do is put forward an actual way of accessing them, of making them a reality for everybody who is entitled to them.
Millions of households will see their bills rise as firms roll out their annual price increases on what's being dubbed National Price Hike Day. Road tax, broadband, mobile bills, water and the TV licence are all going up, as are council taxes in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. The average council tax bill will increase by £106, while water bills will jump by 6%. However, consumer group Which say there are ways to cut costs. They say if you're out of contract, that switching providers can save some people up to £187. And finally, it's not all bad news, though. Energy bills are due to fall to their lowest rate in 2 years after the regulator Ofgem has cut its price cap by 12.3%. It means the average household bill for gas and electricity will fall by around £238 over the course of a year, or around £20 a month. However, some 10 million households are still being urged to submit meter readings to avoid possible overpayments. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Ben and Nana.
So we brought you the news that the nation is literally swimming in its own sewage. And then Nana and I were quite moved by that headline bulletin from Sam just then, saying that it's National Price Hike Day. Road tax, broadband, mobile bills, water and the TV licence are all going up.
It's not
Happy
an April
1st of April to you.
Yeah, it's not an April Fool either. It's actually true.
What is going on?
I don't know. This country's gone mad. Well, listen, lots of you have been in touch with all the thoughts we were discussing. One of them was about crime, because we were talking about how things have changed in the world of crime and how they're trying to find a way of not putting people in jail if they've done something bad by looking at their circumstances. And Jeff says, so you come from a bad background and you just get a tap on the wrist. Out here, just about all crimes that affect us are carried out by those with difficult backgrounds. Burglary, mugging, shoplifting, uninsured or tax vehicles, etc. Serious fraud, smuggling drugs and the like doesn't touch us. I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Pete says, of course the system is soft on crime. Just look at the conviction rate for murder. Now it almost certainly reduced to manslaughter. No one commits murder nowadays. Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, he had it right back in the day. I think, what was his tenure, sort of post September 11th?
Was it something like two strikes and you're out? Or
well, it was called the broken window theory, where a crime as little as smashing a window with a pebble didn't go untouched. You went after every crime, and in turn, that ensures that harder crimes, murders, robberies, muggings, don't escalate.
Well, you only need to go to Qatar or somewhere like that, where you remember when we had the World Cup and people went to Qatar and even they said no drinking, no this, no that. You know what? There were no arrests from any of the people from this country who went to Qatar. You know why? Because Qatar was serious about it, and if you did that, you were 6 months in jail straight off. There was no, oh, well, because you, or because you've got children, or because you've got... You know, people need to get real with this.
Yeah. Well, it's National Price Hike Day, so if you're avoiding crime, just remember your bills are going up as well, and don't consider taking a swim in the sea because it's full of filth.
Well, it is. We'll be discussing that later, but now a shocking new report from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine and said that more than 250 patients per week may have died needlessly in England last year due to very long waits in A&E for a hospital bed.
Yes, and NHS data for England shows more than 1.5 million patients waited 12 hours or more in major A&E departments last year.
Now, a Department for Health and Social Care spokesperson said, we are determined to continue improving experiences for patients and making access to care faster, simpler and fairer.
OK, joining us now is the former Chief Medical Officer at Bupa, Dr Andrew Vallance-Owen. Good morning, Doctor. What's going on here? Is the NHS past the point of no return? It seems like it.
No, I don't think the NHS is past the point of no return, but there are very serious problems in many parts of the service, and they tend to come together with the sort of figures you've had today, really. The beds problem, Many years ago, strategic decisions were made with a consensus, actually, with the profession and everybody, that beds could reduce in the NHS because of new new drugs, new technologies. They might not need the beds. I remember myself when the seatbelt law came in, and not having to work in the accident room, clearing up people's faces after they'd been through windows. So there was a consensus. But then, because of new treatments for cancer, we now have more treatments and better treatments for things like cancer. And because of the demand going up, we find ourselves with not enough beds and huge pressure on them.
But look, the A&E situation is just literally one of the things. I mean, you've got waiting lists with 7.8 million, sorry, an 18-week treatment target, which has not been met since 2016. People waiting, even the cancer treatment that you talked of, although those things have got better, the wait was supposed to be 62 days, but now only 58.3% of those are achieved. It just feels that despite NHS numbers, staff numbers increasing and things like that, it's just not getting better. And yet, if you were to go private, it may well be the same hospital, the same doctors, and the same day, literally, you can get the treatment. And I'm just wondering, what is going wrong with the NHS that they cannot sort of simulate what is going on in private hospitals and do something similar with the NHS?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think it's a terrible situation, as you say. There's no question about that. Private hospitals don't have A&E, they don't do accident and emergency work. They do routine elective work for people with hip replacements and hernias and those sorts of things. So they can't help the A&E system, apart from taking some patients on the waiting lists, the very, very long waiting lists in the NHS, to help ease the pressure there. The problem in A&E, though, is partly, as I say, there are not enough beds. Hospitals are at 95% capacity, but also that those beds are filled with patients who really ought to be getting home or getting into care, and the care side is just as bad. The occupancy in care homes, which have reduced heavily in numbers because of council cuts. So we've got this sort of, treacle where it's just impossible to move anything.
Doctor,
one of the things I was just going to...
Sorry, go on, finish your point. Sorry, I thought you'd finished.
Well, I was just going to quickly say that there is an argument for separating accident and emergency for ill patients to walk-in centres next door to each other if necessary. So if people want to walk into the A&E department, and this happens in Australia, they don't get put into the main area where you'll need to get those sick patients dealt with and up onto a ward as quickly as possible. The incentive is for a 4-hour wait, and which hasn't been achieved for ages, and that sort of encourages the more priority, in a sense, for walk-in patients to be done. Sorry, it's a complicated area, but I think that would be one way to try and separate the two areas so that A&E can deal with acutely ill patients properly.
Doctor, I think part of the problem is the fact that the NHS is by some people treated like a cult. Whenever I've suggested some sort of reform where it's means tested, for example, if you earn over 70k a year, you get access to this, this and this, otherwise you have to go private. If you earn 20k a year or you're unemployed, you get access to the lot. Whenever anyone has suggested something remotely akin to that, they're accused of wanting to destroy the soul of Britain. How can we get over this problem of treating the NHS like a religion and finally deal with it as we should be?
I think people are pretty determined to want to carry on with payment through tax and free at the point of use. But there are strong arguments, for instance, the big pressures on general practice. There are strong arguments, I think, being put that maybe a small charge, as they have in France, for instance, or going to see a GP would perhaps discourage people who don't need to go or who go to a walk-in centre maybe in the same way. That would be one thing that could be done. But, there's been this big commission for healthcare on the NHS, which has come up with some ideas, but the basic funding, we just need to be more efficient, better at what we do. There is a big in my view, a very strong management cadre who are paid rather more than people like junior doctors at the same age. We should give more priority to the front line, get more nurses in.
Yeah.
We're nearly up where we want to be, more doctors to really get on with managing the treatment. They spend 30% of their time, some doctors, on admin. You know, this is
But Andrew, Dr. Andrew, I mean, look, we all know this, but why don't they do something about it? I mean, we'll literally have the same conversation in 5 or 10 years or whatever with this sort of sacred cow that nobody wants to talk, you know, do anything with and wants to keep it exactly the same. Nick, listen, we'll talk to you about that another time. So thank you so much, Dr. Andrew Valence-Owens. Right, well, in response, an NHS spokesperson said the latest published data shows our urgent and emergency care recovery plan, backed by extra funding with more beds, capacity and greater use of measures like same-day emergency care, is delivering improvements, alongside continued work with our colleagues in community and social care to discharge patients when they are medically fit to go home, freeing up beds for other patients. So that is clearly the problem, it's the bed blocking.
Look, there's a lot of very dedicated and committed staff working in the NHS, but envy of the world?
Hardly.
I don't think so.
Not
also,
anymore.
you could probably get rid of a few of those DEI officers on 150k.
And net zero.
Yeah. Right, OK. Up next, find out which party leader the Tories have called a, quote, big, threatening bully. Can you guess? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's a remarkable story, isn't it?
Amazing.
Extraordinary. And also, she was unflappable, apparently, the Princess Royal.
She's
just
brilliant.
refused to get out of the car and said, I'm not going anywhere. Extraordinary. Well, Jim Beaton was awarded the George Cross for protecting the Princess, and delighted to say joins us now, along with the former head of Royalty Protection, Di Davis. Jim, you won't remember, but I met you some time ago at the Imperial War Museum when Princess Anne was opening an exhibition to do with the George Cross, and you were there reunited with her. And you told me then what great admiration you had for the Princess, cool under fire, but you didn't do so badly yourself.
It was probably my job. And also, I had a wee bit of police training, not very much, but a little bit, whereas Princess Anne had nothing. And yet, the way she displayed it, you would have thought she'd been highly trained to deal with any type of that situation.
Even though you'd had some training, you took 3 bullets for the Princess. You effectively stood between her and a deranged gunman.
Well, I was supposed to be a protection officer, really, so I just tried to fuddle about. You must remember that back in 1974, there was no communication, and we were extremely lucky that Michael Hills, who was outside Clarence House and nearby, had got one of the fast police radios, or radios on his shoulder, so he was able to send a message out. Otherwise, we would have just been relying on the good old public to phone in and say there's something happening.
Yeah.
So times have changed drastically.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:21, you're with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Some breaking news from our end, actually. Channel migrant arrivals surged by 43%. That's from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. That's after 442 small boats crossed the Channel yesterday on Easter Sunday. That now brings the total for this year of 5,435 Channel crossings since the beginning of the year. That's well in excess of the 3,790-odd who'd crossed the Channel by small boat at this point in 2023. Let's get the thoughts of author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe and former Labour advisor Matthew Larser on that breaking story just now. Matthew, this is out of control, isn't it?
Well, I think it's a huge political problem for Rishi Sunak, who promised, how can we forget, stop the boat. It was 3 words, it was on his lectern, it was on his backdrop. And absolutely, Nano, it's foolish because they have not stopped the boats. In fact, the number of small boats arrivals, as Mark is breaking today, have increased. So clearly, this is going to be a massive political headache. And although Rwanda may or may not have a flight taking off before the election, whenever we have the election later in the year, clearly, we're still going to have small boats arrivals. And every day during the election campaign, that's going to be thrown back in his face.
It does seem, though, that our political parties don't want to sort of really talk about it. So the minutiae, the detail, the numbers... I mean, they couldn't wait to tell us how many people were dying of COVID or this or that and giving us a number update every day. But now... Nobody, I mean, we'll probably be the first to have broken this story. Nobody would have been really pushing it if we at GB News hadn't done so. Why do you think
You're absolutely right. We were getting daily updates of the numbers during the COVID pandemic. And actually, that's an astonishing amount. Over 440 boats yesterday. The weather's calmer at the moment, a little bit calmer. This is only going to increase over the summer. We're going to see this all summer long. And as you say, Matthew, it's a real political headache for... And you look, Rwanda. I mean, really, even if one flight manages to take off. But, I mean, we're looking at June now, possibly, if this ping-pong goes back and forth between the 2 chambers. But that it's not even going to touch the sides of the thousands who are coming over.
Yeah. It would take even if you think the deterrent effect is going to work, it's going to take time for the deterrent effect to work, and the government hasn't got that time, even if it holds out.
The deterrent effect isn't working because people know. I mean, the people smugglers know that we are, that our immigration policy is in shreds.
Well, Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister, he was on with Patrick Christys the other night, and he revealed that he was meant to have meetings with Rishi Sunak every couple of weeks about migration, and very rarely would that happen. And if they did, he wouldn't want to talk about migration with Mr. Jenrick.
Which is crazy when you've made that your number one pledge. You can imagine that if you were just trying to sweep it under the carpet, but you can't stand with stop the boats and then try and pretend you haven't created a problem of your own.
What are they doing in the Channel? What is actually going on in the Channel now? Is there any kind of proper border force policing?
Look, it's frightening. I mean, Robert was talking about a migrant league table that would be published so we could see who was coming from where. But to be honest, I'd rather stop them from coming anyway. So to have a table so we could see the worst.
Quite apart from anything, it's not safe. It's not safe for people to be crossing in that way.
Well, one man who also says he wants to stop the boats is Richard Tice, leader of Reform UK, who has this morning...
He's got himself in a spat, hasn't he? He's got himself in a spat with Richard Holden, the chairman of the Tory party, who has... dubbed him a threatening bully, I think is the exact phrase, after Richard Tice said pipe down to Tories, part of this sort of Twitter spat. So it's getting pretty nasty.
Well, you're always losing the argument when you start name-calling. That's all
so, I mean, if I was Reform, talking about the small boats crisis, I would be having, the political parties have a ticker. Every Labour Party staff member's screensaver is tickets countdown to the local elections, or they love a countdown clock. If I was Reform, I'd be having a counter on their website about updated every day with the small boats arrivals. So it's a sign, obviously, the Tories are very worried that they're sort of getting into this spat and telling each other to pipe down or threatening bully. Take your pick.
Richard Tice has clearly got his pecker up at the moment. Yesterday, he was attacking Jonathan Gullis. He was saying, we know embarrassing information about you. That one was kicking off.
Who's the new deputy chairman of the Tories?
Yeah, exactly. But look, I think there's been, over the past few days, a really unfair focus on Reform candidates, because if we're going to start casting stones, what about, I don't know, sex corruption, sex crimes amongst the Tory? What about anti-Semitism amongst Labour MPs? We don't need to start looking at candidates in this way.
We saw this with UKIP, didn't we, back in the day, 2015, 2016, the amount of
There are lots of wrong-uns amongst the politicians, that's all I'm saying.
I think we do need to look at the candidates and see what we're getting and where, what...
But across the parties?
Well, I think, yes, across all the parties, because, these people are putting themselves forward to be almost our global representatives. representatives and to represent our interests. So I want to know if they've got some weird
It's
thing
now a
going on.
nightmare in the age of social media because the sheer resources it takes to go through years and years worth of social media posts from people who put themselves forward to be MPs. In the old days, you just had to kind of, check that if they, what letters they'd written to newspapers. Now you have to check mountains and mountains of tweets. But it's really important because all the parties, due diligence, and obviously the bigger the party, the more resources you've got to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it's an issue for smaller parties like
Reform not happy with that so-called hit piece in the Mail of Sunday yesterday on their...
I think we can... I suspect we know where we can guess where that story was briefed from, and it may not be far away from Tory headquarters.
Well, Emma, this story here, this is about eligible parents and carers of 2-year-olds will be entitled to 15 hours of funded childcare per week. Now, it's one of the first part of a sort of an £8 billion package. Is that a useful way of spending our money? Is that a good step forward?
The policy was great, and it's incredibly useful if it was actually had any substance behind it. What really annoys me about this kind of story is that when this was announced last year, Jeremy Hunt was all, we're going to fund this amount of childcare for 15 hours a week. My son's nursery, many childcarers I know said, hang on a minute, we don't have the resources, we don't have the staff, the turnover in early years childcare. It's not properly funded, it's not properly costed. Nurseries simply can't deliver. Lots of parents need this, lots of working parents are desperate for a few more hours.
And if they can't get it, it's going to increase cynicism, isn't it, Emma? It's just going to... It's the cynicism between what politicians say and what's delivered on the ground, I think is really... is perhaps the #1 issue with voters at the moment.
And your nursery's not even open for the Easter holidays?
It's closed for 17 days, and,
So what is that impacting your work? What are you going to do for...
Well, I may or may not have a 3-year-old in the behind the studio today. I mean, I think GBNews are amazing to allow people to bring their little ones in.
They let me in, so...
They let you in.
He only looks about 15 we were discussing this. Ben Leo
I'm 16 next week now.
Is it? Oh, look at you.
And the father of 2.
He's on work experience, yes.
A 16-year-old father of 2. Right, should we move on to other students of Chinese origin? So this story... I haven't got the story. Where is it?
It's in The Guardian, yeah. So Chris Skidmore, who resigned as a Tory MP, but he was the Universities Minister a few weeks ago. We had a by-election a couple of months ago. Yeah. He was the Universities Minister, and he says that now, because of the clampdown on visas, so what the Tories did after Brexit, the Tories allowed this to encourage foreign students, international students, come to study in Britain, pay your fat fees to subsidise British students whose fees have been frozen for years, and then we'll give you a 2-year stay-on visa afterwards. They've now changed their minds. They've done a U-turn on that. They've withdrawn this extra 2 years for students who come, the sort of post-studying visa, and he thinks that's going to be an issue in terms of people coming and paying here for the university.
Can we just try and sneak this last story in about the water companies? Because I just really want to talk about this sewage dumping in bathing spots, which is up nearly 50%. I think we need to address that seriously.
Yeah, we do, but this shouldn't even be political. This shouldn't be about the Lib Dems attacking the Tories over this. Clean water is a basic human right. This is a prerequisite in the UK in 2024. Whether it's our drinking water, whether it's our waterways, whether it's our... I can hear my 3-year-old screeching in the back behind the studio. I'm so sorry. Whether it's our beaches, we shouldn't be talking about human waste, effluent, raw sewage in our waterways.
Absolutely.
The entire water industry needs root and branch reform. And as for the fat cats, or the water fat cat, the fat fish bosses getting their huge dividends and their £1 million bonuses, this is ludicrous.
Matthew, consumers are getting stifled because, unlike the gas and electricity, they can't choose which company to go to. Meanwhile, the service goes down, they pump filth into the riverways and waterways, and the money goes to these offshore owners.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at these the graphs, Thames Water particularly, if you look at the graph of this bit owes money to this bit, which owes money to this bit, and they've only got one source of income. It's you and me and all of us paying our water bill. So I think Thames Water, we've had a couple of days off over the bank holiday over the Thames Water issue, but it's going to come back this week.
Matthew, let me put this to you. Whenever I've discussed this in recent days, people have said the infrastructure's not there to deal with the waste. But that is as a result of mass uncontrolled migration.
Well, I think, look, population going up, you've got to build reservoirs. You can't have one without the other. You've got to build reservoirs, you've got to improve the electricity grid, and that hasn't happened, so you can't have one without the other.
Well, sadly, Bazalget's toilet system, it's flushed down the river. Thank you so much to Emma and Matt. That's all we've got time for now. Let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 11:30, leading the news this morning. Scotland's Minister for Victims and Communities has suggested that people could be investigated for misgendering someone online. That's under a new hate crime law now in force. The legislation makes it a crime to stir up hatred against people with protected characteristics, including disability, age, sexual orientation, or people who are transgender. But some have criticised the law, with one of Scotland's police constables revealing that many officers are still yet to complete training courses. New estimates suggest more than 250 patients may have died needlessly every week in 2023 due to long waits in England's hospitals. A report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has revealed more than 1.5 million patients waited in A&E departments for longer than 12 hours last year. It also found the risk of death started to increase after a 5-hour wait and became worse with longer delays. The Department for Health says, though, it has added thousands of hospital beds and insists it is making progress on waiting times. Labour has criticised the government's free childcare policy in England, claiming that ministers have made a pledge without a plan. From today, eligible parents and carers of 2-year-olds will be entitled to 15 hours a week of free childcare. But some nurseries say the funding's not enough to meet the demand on their waiting lists or to cover increasing staff costs. And energy bills are due to fall to their lowest rate in 2 years after the regulator Ofgem has cut its price cap by 12.3%. It means the average household bill for gas and electricity will fall by around £238 over the course of a year, or around £20 a month. That's the latest. More from the newsroom at 12 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a look at the markets this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2614 and €1.1699. The price of gold is £1,785.83 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,952 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Just a quick clarification. In the previous chat about the small boat arrivals, it was 442 people, of course, and not boats. I know things are bad, but not that bad just yet, in 9 small boats. So that's 442 people arrived by small boat across the channel yesterday, which is a 43% rise on the same period last year. Right, Tom and Emily are with us for Good Afternoon Britain. What's in store, guys?
Well, of course, we're going to be touching on that enormous number of boat arrivals, but there's something else that is happening in our airtime, and this is one of the best things about presenting from 12 till 3. It's when real news starts to happen, protests occur, stories are broken, and we'll be live on the ground in Edinburgh, because today, April Fool's Day, of course, is the day that the new hate crime law comes into force in Scotland, and there'll be a big protest there.
And it's very interesting, concerning, because we've heard from the president of the Association for Scottish Police, and he is adamant. He is warning the Scottish Government that essentially the police do not have enough time to be policing our online activity, because that's what this will come down to. He says this legislation will be hijacked by an activist fringe. So essentially anyone saying, oh, you were mean, you're stirring up hate, and then the police have to investigate. They've already said they'll investigate every single crime that comes to them. So how much time is that going to take? And at the same time, you know, the police aren't going after the real criminals. So we're going to be delving into this, getting different opinions on this, because of course some people think this is a mark of progress, but we'll be getting into the detail.
Yeah,
what exactly is this hate law going to criminalise?
Speaking to someone from the SNP, who of course have pushed this through the Scottish Parliament, and it's so interesting because it's every element of life, even within a private home. If two parents are discussing something and the child thinks that's not right on, they can report their parents to the police and have that assessed as a hate incident.
You could stop that quite easily. No phones, no recording instruments at all in the house. It's ridiculous.
Get rid of it altogether.
Extreme.
We're also going to be having a bit of a debate over cannabis because Germany is decriminalising it for personal use, and we're asking whether that should happen here.
Yes,
we're going to have two sides of that debate.
It's interesting. There's an angle that almost no one has picked up on this story, which is, you know how the UK, very often people will say the UK is in risk of breaking international law. That's an absolutely outrageous thing to do. There's allegations that migration policy and the Rwanda bill might break international law. Well, there is an international law on drugs. It's called the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. It was signed by just about every country in the world in 1961. It's an international treaty preventing the use of drugs for recreational use. And by most accounts, Germany's just broken that international law by legalising cannabis.
Oh, wow.
So perhaps not all international law is created equal.
I just feel like we're missing out on a lot of tax dollars, you know. Colorado was the first to move in America. It transformed their city. They had so much more money for public services. I think most of America's done it now. You know,
I take the view there's enough cannabis on the streets. So if we give it the green light in this way, it's going to be
this is why it's such an interesting debate, because it's everywhere now. You go to any city in the United Kingdom, you can probably smell a bit of cannabis. Why aren't we taxing that? Why aren't we regulating that?
No, but I think you need to look at San Francisco and see what's happened there, and then you might have a rethink, because I think it's a slippery, slidey slope.
Yeah, but in San Fran, they pretty much dish out fentanyl for free.
All of that and more. You see, it's going to be an active discussion. All of that and more on Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. For now, though, this is Britain's Newsroom.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Could we talk about opening up the new Bond role to someone, Alex? And,
yes.
This is an actor called Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Right. Do you remember when the director of the 50 Shades of Grey films had a young boyfriend, really, really young, like half her age? It was in all the papers at the time. Well, it turns out that was him.
He broke his career, I think, in a film called Kick-Ass, which was... I watched it, really great film.
You can't compare... What's his name? Who's the last Bond?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig. You can't
to Roger.
compare,
But you can't compare Roger Moore to Sean Connery either.
No.
Who's your favourite Bond? My favourite Bond is Pierce Brosnan, probably.
Same.
Oh, really?
Oh, come on, yes.
Sean Connery, maybe
So
Sean.
the classics.
Yeah.
I'm quite keen on Roger Moore, but I quite like the kind of the ironic raise of the eyebrow and all that.
Well, interesting, this sort of puts to death all of those rumours that James Bond was going to be a woman, James Bond was going to be a black man. There was lots of different rumours going around of what they were going to do with his
Idris
role.
Elba would be good.
He hasn't signed yet.
As a feminist, I would say James Bond shouldn't be a woman.
I totally agree.
Because we need to have our own stories that we tell and our own heroes. We don't need to kind of go in on that. We just need to have a story that celebrates a woman, I think.
I agree.
Who was your favourite, Eamon?
So I do think if you look at them all, there's not a bad one amongst them. But personally, I got to know Roger Moore, and an absolute gentleman and a man who was a star in every sense of the word, and an impossibly handsome-looking man. Pierce, I think Pierce, very, very good, and Pierce, again, is a very likeable fella. Very, very likeable. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, that the appetite, I think, for James Bond is still there, but they are reinventing it. And the fact that they change it and kind of go with the time. I thought Daniel Craig was very good, actually.
I just struggled with Daniel Craig the most because I just couldn't cope with blonde Bond. So the idea of a female Bond or, you know, I couldn't
else,
cope with Daniel Craig, so...
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and, of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
It's 11:40. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Now, the average household water and sewage bill will rise by 6% a year from today.
And it comes as the Lib Dems have accused water companies of committing, quote, environmental vandalism with the amount of sewage discharged in our waters. GB News Southwest of England reporter Jeff Moody joins us now from North Devon. Good morning, Jeff. What's the water like where you are?
Good morning to you. Well, not very good. It's on the list of beaches where you really shouldn't swim. I mean, everybody's out in force this weekend, this bank holiday weekend, trying to enjoy the most of that weather. But just here in Devon alone, there are 29 beaches where it's been deemed unsafe to swim. Plenty of people out at the moment walking their dogs, but luckily nobody seems to be in the water for a swim. Now, the problem has arisen because of the sheer amount of rain that we've been experiencing over the last few days. And when that happens, our sewage system is so antiquated. It's a Victorian system that really isn't fit for purpose, and the water companies have a very stark choice. They either let the sewage flow up through the drains onto the streets, or they discharge it into the water. That's the option they've been taking, which has resulted in our waters becoming more and more unhealthy. There's a real serious risk of salmonella, E. coli, and all sorts of nasties too. All this on the day that our water rates are going up. That's no April Fool. The average rise in prices up to 6% over most of the country. The water companies say that this is inevitable. They have to do something about this, and this is the way they're going to do it, by raising the prices. But of course, it begs the question, why has it taken so long? Why are they only looking into this matter now? It's been something that's been very much in the public eye for several years now, and it looks like this is the first opportunity that they are addressing it. People on the whole are fed up with it. They're fed up with the rising prices, and they're fed up with the fact that on a warm, sunny Easter weekend, they can't even go in the sea.
Jeff, are there warnings that people shouldn't go in the water there, or is it just up to the individual to do that? Because you'd think that, knowing what we know, that there's an issue. Do they actually have warnings around the beach?
I haven't seen one around this beach at all. I mean, there are very often. I've been to many beaches over the last couple of years reporting for GB News, and I've seen those signs everywhere, more and more cropping up. But I can't see any on this beach today. I think the emphasis does seem to be on everybody to look it up online and to find out for themselves. But you're right, there certainly should be more of an indication of just how unhealthy the waters can be at the moment.
Jeff, any info on the Thames water situation?
Well, I mean, it's ongoing, isn't it? It's ongoing. We're not really sure exactly what's happening at the moment, other than the fact that there's a lot of talk of them being nationalised. There's a lot of anger about the fact that taxpayers are being asked to bail out the situation. It really does seem very desperate, doesn't it? And it's certainly feeding into people's sense that something is very much amiss in this country. You know, if the money that we've been paying every month towards our water bills isn't going to make sure that the system is healthy in itself, then what is it for? Yes, great talk about nationalisation. Whether it will happen, I don't know. I mean, Labour has said that they're not considering nationalising it at the moment because they feel that it would be too expensive to do so. So it seems to be an ongoing problem with very little results at the moment.
Okay.
It's crystal clear, isn't it? Yeah. Unlike the water, that they should be nationalised. I think so. Jeff Moody, thank you so much.
So, on this Bank Holiday Monday, don't go near the rivers or the waterways or the seas for a dip because it's full of filth. It's also National Price Hike Day. Your water and your TV licence is going up, along with your council tax. Oh, and by the way, 443 people crossed the Channel to England yesterday illegally, and you're paying £12 million a day for their accommodation.
Well, listen, don't forget to not go on the trains or the roads because of the awful weather.
Other than that,
exciting, isn't it?
Other than that, have a lovely Bank Holiday Monday. We're going to have a little break now, but stay with us because have you been caught up in the Easter travel chaos? gbviews@gbnews.com. We're going to read some more of your emails. Until then, stay with us. Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. Well, through the rest of the day, it's a mixed picture. Sunshine and showers, particularly in the south. Some of these heavy, further pulses of rain further north. And it's all thanks to low pressure, which continues to dominate the weather pattern through the week ahead, bringing in various systems off the Atlantic, some wet and windy weather at times. For the rest of the day, this band of cloud and rain affecting parts of Northern Ireland, North Wales into northern England, southern Scotland will remain here for much of the day. Quite cool under this. Bright skies to the north of this, some sunny spells across the northwest Highlands, sunshine and heavy showers across the rest of England and Wales. Temperatures here in the best of the sunshine up to around 15 or 16 Celsius. Showers rumble on through into the evening time, but they do start to fade away into the early hours. This band of rain continues to affect parts of Scotland, particularly in the east, and then further showers pushing their way eastwards through the English Channel. Some of these could be heavy at times. Under clearer spells, temperatures dipping to low single figures in the countryside, but for most it will be quite a cloudy start to Tuesday. Best of the brightness across this central swathe of the UK, some mist and fog patches soon clearing away. And then through Tuesday itself, it remains quite cloudy and damp across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Elsewhere, some bright spells, some scattered showers, and then later on in the day, some cloud and rain pushing into the southwest. Temperatures up again to the mid-teens, a little cooler in the north.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Nana Akwe and Ben Lear. It's just coming up to 49 minutes after 11 o'clock. Lots of you have been in touch on the topics we've been discussing. Let's have a look at what you've been saying about the sewage, because I'm absolutely disgusted by it.
I have been for weeks. I sound like a broken record.
Well, it's awful. It's embarrassing. Water companies are too concerned with paying out returns to investors and investing in preventative measures. Essential service industries should never have been sold off to the private sector. I'm with you.
Yeah, and Jackie says, how can we blame the government for the water scandal when it's in private hands? Well, I mean, they're regulated by Ofwat for a start, and they seem to be utterly toothless.
Yeah.
Gary says, how can these robbers take a bonus from the customer? I thought a bonus was for higher productivity and achievement, and for them, priority is reducing pollution, which sadly is destroying our environment.
Well, that's not their priority, is it? Their priority is to their shareholders, which is the issue here. It's a conflict of interest. So to them, they're getting bonuses for giving their shareholders, I think it's over £78 billion in dividends, whilst receiving only £62 billion. So they are obviously spending our money on foolishness. Karina says, funny how now the Thames is full of sewage, people are taking notice. Surfers Against Sewage has been around for years in Devon and Cornwall and South West water bills, which have been the highest in the UK because we're paying for the beach clean-up. It's a joke, it really is.
That campaign group, actually, Surfers Against Sewage, they've been doing a great job for many years, not only just trying to protect the integrity of our waters, but cleaning up the beach of plastic and pollutions. So, yeah, well done to those guys.
Yeah, well, thank you for all your messages as well. Keep them coming, obviously. But right now, Easter is upon us and travel disruption is in full force today. The RAC predicts more than 2 million car journeys will be made.
Yeah, rather them than me. And to make matters worse, there are planned rail engineering works across the country. That means no trains for many trying to get back after the long weekend. So GB News South East England reporter Ray Addison is at Euston Station, and national reporter Theo Chikomba is by the M25. It sounds pretty busy down there, Theo, but Ray, is it the same situation at Euston?
No, not at all, I'm afraid, guys. Welcome to Euston Station, one of London's busiest train stations and your gateway to the northwest. However, today you can only go to a place called Watford Junction. Let's take a look at the departures board over there. You can see there every 15 minutes you can head to Watford Junction as many times as you like, because all of the other destinations have been cancelled today. You can see over there the disrupted and cancelled section of the board. It's actually, they're not bothering to write anything because there are so many disruptions and cancellations. So where can't you go because of these major engineering works? Well, Avanti West Coast routes and London North Western Railway, they are completely gone today. So that's destinations such as Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Liverpool, Milton Keynes, Northampton, and as far as Glasgow and Edinburgh as well. And that's all the way through until 5 a.m. tomorrow. So the first train coming in here will be about 5:35 a.m. tomorrow at Euston. Now, I think it looks a little bit busy in the background. It's not too bad, is it? This is actually, normally you'll have about 25,000 people coming through here every single day. Most of the footfall we're seeing is because of the underground station that you just saw there. So this should be peak hours for Euston, but it certainly isn't at the moment. Barely any commuters, most people, as we know, heading to Watford Junction. Other disruptions across the country as well due to this engineering work on the bank holiday. London, Liverpool Street and Colchester, that's off. The Elizabeth line as well between London, Paddington and Stratford, Abbey Wood, Cardiff and Carmarthen. There's major disruption. And thank you to James for messaging in and telling us about the Transpennine Express as well. Major disruption on that line.
Thank you very much, Ray. Theo Chikomba, you're there by the M25. Is it business as usual there, or does it feel particularly busy?
Well, it's quite the opposite to where Ray is in central London at Euston Station here on the M25. For those watching us on television, you might be able to see just over my shoulder the cars moving very slowly. Normally on this portion of the road, if you're going anti-clockwise on the M25 heading towards the Dartford crossing, you would normally be going around 60 miles an hour. But at the moment, a lot of these cars are completely still, and that's because we're expecting millions of people on the roads today. Many of those returning home following their Easter getaway, and others actually using this opportunity to get away as schools are closed right across the country. But the major disruption that we have seen in the UK today is on the M42 in Warwickshire between junction 9 and 10. There was a collision this morning, and we understand Warwickshire police have been there conducting investigations. And other delays in the country on the M5 in Somerset and on the M6 in Cheshire and Greater Manchester, expecting long delays over there. But on roads like this, it can be a fraction of a second if you aren't paying attention. Just here, just in the last hour or so, a lorry and a small car collided. Fortunately, there weren't any serious injuries, but of course, many people are expected to check before they travel.
Theo, Ray, thanks very much. Appreciate it. That's all from us on Britain's Newsroom. Have you enjoyed yourself, Nana?
It's been fun. I'm a Britain's Newsroom virgin, but obviously you've broken me in.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent.
Well, listen, up next, stay tuned for Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. It's been a pleasure as ever. I look forward to seeing you on Friday, actually, because I'll be doing Thinky Things.
And I'm back tomorrow with Bev. Here's Good Afternoon Britain.
Well, there we are. But coming up on Good Afternoon Britain, we're going to be live outside Holyrood in Edinburgh as protests erupt due to this new controversial hate crime law that comes into force today.
And it's not just protest erupting, but a war of words between the Tories and Reform UK. The Tory party chairman has called the Reform UK leader a bully. Why is that? And what is the war of words between these two parties? We dive into precisely what's going on.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. Well, through the rest of the day, it's a mixed picture. Sunshine and showers, particularly in the south. Some of these heavy, further pulses of rain further north. And it's all thanks to low pressure, which continues to dominate the weather pattern.